In the previous demo, we have seen how to use a factory as a service, value as a service, class as a service, etc. Let me continue with the demo. In our demo, now I'm going to create my own service called to-do service. So this to-do service is going to be a simple one. To start up with, I'm creating, already we have a folder called services folder. In that services folder, let me click new file. In that new file, I'm creating a file named todo.service.ts. So export the class to-do service. And you all know, if I want to make this service class as an injectable class, we are supposed to import injectable from Angular/core. So injectable is a decorator that we decorate our class with injectable. Okay, and this class is just going to have a simple function. Let it be get all to-dos. This get all to-dos is it's going to be a function, okay, which is going to return a, it's going to return a guest array. So what is this guest array? First, let me create a model. So to create the model, or sorry, this is to-dos, right? So to-dos means we'll create a model called to-do model. In fact, later I'm going to consume the service from this website called JSON folder HttpClient.com. So here in this JSON placeholder HttpClient, they are providing the fake REST API call. We can give a call towards that and it will give me some fake JSON detail. JSON placeholder.HttpClient.com. In this website, you can see there are a lot of some common use cases they have provided. If you see, there are 200 to-dos are there. So when I click this, you will get the JSON.com. Sorry, you will get the JSON out of that. So look at this. It's having some sort of a schema. It takes user ID, title, and completed. So this is what later we are just going to use it. Or probably I'll just copy some few among that. I copied the first three of it and let me put it into one var to-dos, or let be to-do, which is going to be of a to-do array. As of now, I haven't created. In the constructor, let me initialize it. This dot to-dos equal to, that's an array. In the array, I'm just pasting this 3 data by default. So copy, paste it. So we have a to-do array. Okay, so as of now, let me make this as an object array so that it won't give any error. It's an array of object. Okay, so if you look at this, it has 3 details in this array, and when I call this get all to-dos, it's going to return a to-do array. So if it want to return, I can just return this dot to-dos. Okay, it's not to-do array, it is array of objects. So it's array of object. So whenever I call this get all to-dos, it's going to return an array of object. But I feel that we should not go for the standard one or a generic type. Instead of that, I want to go with my own model. So you all know how to do this. We have to create a model called to-do. So in the models, I'm just going to create a new file called todo.ts. Let me define the shape for the to-do. So to do that, export interface to-do, and I'm just copying one of the to-do, paste it So that to do means it will have a user ID which is going to be of a number type. ID is going to be again a number type. Title is going to be of a string type. And completed is going to be of a Boolean type. So we have successfully created our model. So since we created it as a model, now I can make it strongly typed. Our to do, in the to do service, instead of array of object, I can say it is a to do array. Okay, and I can even here specify that get all to dos, instead of array of object, I can say it is a to do array. So whenever I call this get all to dos, it's just going to return this to dos as of now. Okay, so it's a service. So we have successfully created one service here. Now if I want to make this service to use throughout the application, you all know where to get registered. Throughout the application, in any component it needs to be accessed. So where we need to do it? Where we need to register it? In the module level. Okay, I'm just moving into the module. To do service. I have registered it to the module level so that I can inject it wherever I want. For example, now I can inject it in my app.component.ts. So we have injected it. Since we have injected, now I can call it console.log this dot to do service dot get all to dos. So save this and refresh. You should see that it gives the to do object. Okay, so as of now we have hard coded that. So it is not always a good practice to hard code it, right? It should be taken from the service. They have given an endpoint. This is our endpoint. This is our endpoint. So when I reach this endpoint, it's going to give me the data. Assume that like I want to do some offline work. If it is online, then we can connect to the RESTful endpoint and I can get that. How we are going to, or are you going to wait till the services get ready? For example, in the real-time scenario, this sort of things will be created by the server-side guys using Spring MVC or ASP.NET Core or ASP.NET Web API. They will create the service like this and they will provide the endpoint to us. For example, this is our endpoint. When I reach this endpoint, I'll get this JSON payload. But in the real time, we cannot wait till the server-side guys complete their services. So we need to the client side, as a website developers, we should not always depend on the server side guys to complete their work. So either you can hard code like this and do it. This is one way. Okay, if you look at this, I have hard coded that. I know the contract. I know this is what this to dos look. So I can hard code that, or otherwise, even we can take it from the what to say, like I can create some folder. For example, in the source folder, I'm creating a new folder called API. Sorry, I'm creating a new folder here called API. In the source folder, I have created an API folder. In that API folder, I'm just simply creating a new file called todo.json. In this todo.json, whatever it returns, I'm just taking this, pasting it here. Okay, so I'm just mimicking that. So hereafter, I should have some sort of options to access this todo.json through a HTTP endpoint. I hope you all understood. So what I have done is I have created a new folder called API. In the API, I have just directly placed the, or I can even create fake data or whatever name you want. So API / todo.json. When I hit this endpoint, it should give all those things. So to achieve this, what I supposed to do in the sense, you need to go to the Angular CLI.json. In the Angular CLI.json, you can see there is a section called assets section. So this is a section where we are supposed to like the folder, whichever folder you are planning to access the static content, you can place it. For example, assets is a folder is there. Now along with that, I'm just going to provide API. Now henceforth, since we added the API folder, it's going to serve the static contents from this folder. Like I can access the API/test.json, but you need to restart the server because it needs to understand that. So just restart it. Once you restarted it, now I can access that endpoint with the help of localhost 4200/API/test.json. Okay, so now going back to my application, localhost 4200 will work. At the same time, /API/todo.json. Look at that. So now we have one endpoint. So with this endpoint, now I can access the todo.json. Later, the server-side guys complete their work. I can just use the endpoint. But for practice, the demo, for the development purpose, I can there is no longer to depend on the server-side guys to produce the detail. I can just simply put this details into my API folder and I can share that as a static content and I can develop the application on my own without depending on anyone else. I hope you all understood this. Okay, fine. Now there should be a common place to change this stuff. For example, in the src folder, closing everything, in the source folder I'm creating a new folder called constants. So in this constants folder, I'm just going to create a new file called url.constants.ts. In the url.constant.ts, I'm just going to export a constant called urls. It's nothing but an object. It has key and value pair. For example, get all to-dos URL. So as of now, we have our endpoint. Our endpoint is API/todo.json. Is it to-dos or to-do? To-do. Okay, and whereas here it is to-dos, that's better to have it as to-dos.json. So whenever I call this URL, it's going to I have exported this. So this is the place. As of now, rather hard coding this one, I will be just always calling this get all to-dos URL. Once the server side guys has completed their task, we can provide the endpoint of that particular endpoint so that it will work directly from there. So as of now, if I want to access this, this is the way to access that to-dos.json. So I'm just copying that endpoint and I placed it here. Later I can change it with whatever the link is there. You can just specify it, and it is not mandatory to provide the complete one. This is the base address. You can remove this as well. API/todo.json, that's more than enough. And in the programming, I'll be using this urls.getAllTodos URL. Okay, now I need to give a request to this particular endpoint, get the data. So we have successfully created the todos.json, and it can be accessible via one particular endpoint. So everything is ready. Now it's time for us to go ahead and give a RESTful call. That is, I want to give a AJAX call to hit that endpoint, get the data. So if you look at our service, that is our todo.service.ts. As of now, I have hard coded it. Okay, this is not the correct way. You should not hard code it. Instead of hard coding it, we need to call that particular endpoint. From that endpoint, we need to take the details. Okay, so this is where I'm going to use inbuilt service. So far we have seen only the user defined services like to do service, calculator service, etc. Now I'm going to introduce you one inbuilt service called HTTP client. So this HTTP client service is available in this particular module, that is import from @angular/common/HTTP. In this package, we have one class called HTTP client. So using this HTTP client service, I can access the endpoints outside the application. Especially I can do an AJAX call, I can give a get request, I can give a put request in a asynchronous manner. Okay, but this angular/common/HTTP, in order to use this, our application should depend on HTTP client module. In order to make our application to use this particular service, our application should depend on HTTP client module. So you all know where to provide the dependency, where to provide it. My app module needs to be depending on this HTTP client module. Where to provide the dependency? In the app module.ts. So I'm just moving to the app module ts. And let me make our module to depend on HTTP client module. So this HTTP client module is available in angular/common/HTTP. Okay, now it can understand this. Got it? Okay. Now going back to my code. In my todo-service.ts, I plan to use this HTTP client. So if I want to use this HTTP client, so you all know we need to inject it. So there is no need to register the, for your information, there is no need to register this because this is an inbuilt service. User defined services needs to be registered and injected, whereas inbuilt services can be directly injected. So for example, I'm just using public HTTP or HTTP client :HTTP client. That's it. Injection done. Now it can make use of all the methods under this HTTP client with any of our code. For the first one, I'm just going to use getAllToDos. So this getAllToDos method is going to use that this dot HTTP client dot, I want to give a get request. When I call the get request, it will ask you to provide the URL, and you all know we have created a constant called URLs, so auto import that. Okay, URLs dot get all to do's URL, that will return that URL. Okay, when I call this get method, listen, when I call the get method, it returns what? That is important. Get method returns you can see that. What does it return? It returns a observable. That too, it returns a observable of object, but I don't want it as object. I want to in that object, obviously it will be having the to do array only, right? So I can simply say, when I give a request, cast it to do array. Get all to do URL is going to return some JSON, which is going to obviously match this. So now look at the same get method. It says it returns observable of to do array. So I can even say it's going to return a observable of to do array. So I'm just going to return this, simple. See how easy it is. This is a new feature introduced in Angular 5. In Angular 4, there is no class called HttpClient. There is no service called HttpClient. They use HTTP service. In HTTP service, in order to do the mapping, they will be using map, lot of things. But here it is very easy. I'm giving a get request to this particular URL. It's going to return some data. That data is going to match this to do array. Return it. So get all to dos is done. Now I want to consume it. Okay, in order to consume this, obviously you cannot directly consume it because it is an observable. In the app component already we have got this data, right? To do service dot get all to dos, but unfortunately we cannot directly use it. If I want to use it, you all know how to do that. To do service dot get all to dos, it's going to return observable. So since it returns an observable, we need to use dot subscribe method. Let me subscribe for it. When I subscribe it, it's just going to return a to do array. It's going to give a to do list which is of a to do array. Okay, let me import that. And I'm just printing that console.log to do list. Save it. See the result. Something going wrong. Let me open the developer tool. Cannot read the property of get all to do URL of undefined. Why? Control click. URLs. I have exported it properly. todos.json. URLs dot get all to dos URL. Some constants, URL constant, yes. Okay, let me just restart it. Okay, yeah, I think we got it. The problem is probably we haven't restarted it. So look at this. So we got the 200 to do arrays. As of now, we are accessing it from the local, but if you want to access it from the server as well, no issue. I can just copy this endpoint, put it in my URLs dot constants. So instead of this, I can place it this one. So save it, compiled. It gives a request once again. Now it's an AJAX call, so it will take some time. Let me click network. Is that given a request to that? Refresh. Okay, look at this. It gives an XHR call to this particular endpoint. To this endpoint, and we got the record, and obviously you should see that in the console. So very easy. You decide it from wherever you want. Our code will work.